So we have arrived at the infamous V3 update. If you've been following Genshin beta cycles for a while, you know this is usually the point of no return. This is where the developers stop messing around with concepts and start locking in the final numbers. And for patch 6.3, specifically for Columbina, Zibai, and Illuga, the developers decided to wake up and choose violence. We are looking at some massive shifts here. We have raw damage nerfs across the board for Columbina's base kit, a complete restructuring of her constellations that screams money grab, and some absolutely insane buffs for Zibai that nobody saw coming. Looking for the best way to recharge in Genshin Impact? Loot Bar is the smarter choice. It works exactly like the in-game top-up, but it's way more affordable. New users get 10% off with the link in the pinned comment, and users can receive an additional 5% discount coupon. Loot Bar also has special deals on crystal packs, including the 6480 bundle, and even an all-in-one package with everything you need. See this? The regular $100 pack only costs $80 on Loot Bar. The process is simple and secure. You don't need your password or login. Just enter your UID, pick your server, choose your pack, and your crystals are delivered in seconds. Players around the world trust Loot Bar because it's fast, safe, and affordable. So don't waste your money. Click the link in the description or pinned comment and start saving on your top-ups today. Loot Bar, safe, fast, and way more affordable. Now, for a quick reminder about the new giveaways. Both of the 6480 Genesis Crystals giveaways are active right now and will stay open until December 31st. I'll be announcing the winners on January 1st. As always, these are part of the monthly giveaways we do here on the channel, so if you haven't joined yet, make sure you do. All you need to do is be subscribed, watch all the videos, and comment your UID and region. 2 winners will be picked soon, so don't miss your chance. Today, I'm going to break down every single number change so you don't have to do the math yourself. We're going to look at why Columbina's Bloom teams might be in trouble, why Zibai's C2 is suddenly the most broken thing in the beta, and what Illuga's Elemental Mastery nerfs actually mean for the meta. By the end of this, you'll know exactly if your Primogems are safe or if you need to skip this banner entirely. Let's start with Columbina. When the notification for the V3 changes popped up, the first thing everyone saw was red text, just a sea of red numbers pointing down. And look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. If you are a free-to-play player or someone who just buys the Welkin Moon, this update hurts. It stings a lot. Let's look at her elemental skill, the gravity interference. This is her bread and butter. Before today, her lunar charged damage was sitting at a very respectable 9.99% of her max HP. That has been slashed down to 8.47%. Now, a 1.5% drop doesn't sound like the end of the world on paper, right? But remember, this is scaling off max HP. When you have 40,000 or 50,000 HP, that percentage drop translates to thousands of damage points lost every single time you cast that skill. But the real kick in the teeth is the Lunar Bloom damage. This was the stat everyone was excited about because it hits 5 times. It went from 3.60% down to 2.53%. That is a massive reduction. When you multiply that across 5 hits, you are losing a huge chunk of your total burst potential. They also nerfed the lunar crystallized damage from 18.75% down to 15.88%. So, what is the story here? Why are they doing this? It seems pretty clear that the developers looked at her C0 performance with 0 extra copies, and decided she was doing too much. She was too safe. She dealt too much damage while providing too much utility, so they took a pair of scissors to her base kit. But here is where things get spicy. This isn't just a nerf, it's a relocation of power. If you look at her constellations, specifically C1, C3, C4, and C5, they nerfed the team-wide buff. Before, she elevated nearby party members' lunar reaction DMG by 3%. Now, it's 1.5%. They literally cut her support capability in half for these constellations. But wait, I hear you ask, where did all that power go? It went to C2. This is the classic constellation trap. Look at the changes to her second constellation. It used to increase her max HP by 30%. Now, it increases it by 40%. That is a massive stat stick buff, but it gets crazier. The lunar charged and lunar crystallized buffs at C2 were increased from 0.7% to 1%. And the big one, The party-wide lunar reaction DMG buff at C2 was boosted from 3% all the way up to 7%. Do you see what they did there? They took the power away from the low spenders and the lucky single pullers, and they locked it behind a paywall. At C0, Columbina is now significantly weaker than she was yesterday. But at C2, she is an absolute monster. She is arguably stronger than her V2 version if you have her at C2. This brings up a huge problem for the average player. We are seeing a trend where a character feels incomplete or just okay at C0, but becomes a god-tier unit at C2. It happened with Raiden Shogun, it happened with Nahida, and now it is happening with Columbina. They are balancing the game around the credit card, not the character kit. But before you go delete the game, we need to talk about the sleeper hit of this update, Zibai. While everyone is crying about Columbina, Zibai is quietly getting buffed to the moon. If you were sleeping on Zibai, wake up. Let's look at her passive 1. The damage dealt by Spirit Steed's Stride was increased from 40% of her defense to 60%. That is a straight-up 50% damage increase on that multiplier. That is huge. Defense-scaling characters usually struggle to output real damage without heavy investment, but this bumps her baseline up significantly. But the real magic, and I mean actual magic, is in her constellations, specifically C2. In the previous version, her C2 was just a boring stat buff. Defense increased by 50%. Yawn. Boring. Useful, but boring. They completely scrapped that. The new C2 is insane. Now, when she is in lunar phase shift mode, she increases all nearby party members' lunar crystallized reaction DMG by 30%. 30%. That is a team-wide reaction-specific damage buff that she didn't have before. But they didn't stop there. They also added a nuke to her kit. At C2, the second hit of her Spirit Steed's Stride now deals additional damage equal to 550% of Zibai's defense. It used to be 100%, it is now 550%. I want you to visualize that for a second. Imagine a character hitting you with a wet noodle, and then suddenly, in the next patch, that noodle turns into a freight train. That is a 5.5x multiplier increase. This changes Zibai from a nice-to-have support into a character who can arguably nuke enemies better than some DPS carry units. They also tweaked her C4 to make her fourth hit deal 250% of the original reaction damage, which scales infinitely better than the old flat percentage. And her C6 now gives her energy back faster, with a 50% gain rate instead of 40%. So, while Columbina got the pay-to-win treatment, Zibai got the please play this character treatment. It feels like the developers realized nobody was going to pull for Zibai, so they juiced her kit up with steroids to make her indispensable for lunar teams. And then we have Illuga. Poor Illuga. If you are an Illuga fan, I'm sorry. His elemental burst, the Lunar Crystallized Reaction DMG bonus, got hit. It went from 508.3% elemental mastery scaling down to 406.7%. That is a straight nerf, no way around it. His passive 2 also took a hit. The damage increase based on elemental mastery dropped from the 61 and 2200% scaling down to 48, 96, 160%. What does this tell us? It tells us that Illuga was probably breaking the game in internal testing. Elemental mastery scaling is dangerous because it can spiral out of control very quickly with the right buffs, like from Nahida or Sucrose. So, here's the challenge we are all facing now. The V3 crisis. You have Columbina, a character who is visually stunning and has amazing lore, but her free-to-play value just dropped off a cliff. Then you have Zibai, a character you might not have cared about, who is suddenly looking like a mandatory pull if you want to run a crystallized team. The problem is resource management. If you are sitting on 100 wishes, what do? Do you pull for Columbina knowing she is weaker at C0? Do you try to snipe Zibai? Or do you skip everything because you feel insulted by the nerfs? This is the psychological game Hoyoverse plays. They nerf the base kit to lower the power floor, but they buff the constellations to raise the power ceiling. They want you to feel that fear of missing out on the character's true potential. They want you to say, well, I already got one copy, maybe I should just go for C2 to make her complete. Don't fall for it blindly. Let's dig a little deeper into the actual gameplay implications here, specifically for the Columbina teams. Before this update, the Dream Team was looking like Columbina, Zibai, and a strong off-field applicator. The idea was that Columbina would drive the reactions, triggering those massive lunar blooms. With the nerf to her bloom damage dropping to 2.53%, that team composition loses a lot of DPS. However, look at the synergy with the new Zibai. Zibai's new C2 gives a 30% team-wide lunar crystallize buff. Columbina's C2 gives a 7% team-wide lunar buff. If you are a whale or just extremely lucky, and you have both of these characters at C2, you are stacking damage modifiers that completely negate the nerfs. But for the average player, this creates a divide. The Bloom playstyle for Columbina is strictly worse now. The Crystallize playstyle, however, might actually be better if you have Zibai. It's almost like they are trying to force us away from Bloom and towards Crystallize. Lunar Bloom was easy damage, it was free real estate. Lunar Crystallize requires shields, positioning, and picking up shards. It's harder to play. By nerfing Bloom and buffing Zibai, the Crystallize support, the devs are basically grabbing us by the shoulders and shaking us, screaming, "Stop playing Bloom, play Crystallize." It is also worth noting the lore snippet in Illuga's changes, "Decipher the whispers of the wild hunt." This doesn't affect gameplay, but it confirms that her kit is tied deeply to the new faction or enemy types coming in 6.3. Usually, when a character has specific anti-faction lore or mechanics, they end up being very meta-relevant for the Abyss cycle of that patch. So even with the nerfs, Illuga might be necessary just to counter the new enemies. Here is the bottom line, the moment of truth. Is Columbina ruined? No. She is not ruined, but she has been changed from a must-pull carry into a luxury support sub-DPS. If you pull Columbina at C0 now, do not expect her to carry your Abyss run by herself. She is there to apply the element, survive with her HP scaling, and look pretty. She is an enabler. But if you are chasing big numbers, the sad reality is that the damage has been moved to Zibai. Zibai is the secret winner of 6.3 V3. That 550% DEF scaling on her C2 is not a joke. That is main DPS territory numbers on a support character. It feels like a bait and switch. We all looked at the Harbinger, Columbina, expecting her to be the demon. But it turns out the real demon might be the 4-star, or standard 5-star, depending on her rarity confirmation, standing next to her. If you are a meta slave, and I say that with love, because we all are a little bit, you need to keep your eye on Zibai. If she is on Columbina's banner, that banner value just went up. If she is on the other banner, then Hoyoverse is evil, and they are forcing us to split our polls. To summarize the chaos of version 3, Columbina got her knees broken at C0. Her skill damage, bloom damage, and crystallize damage are all down significantly. Her team buffs at low constellations were halved. However, her C2 got massive buffs, making her a high-investment monster. Zibai got the glow-up of the century. Her damage multipliers were buffed, and her C2 was reworked into a broken damage nuke plus a team buffer. She is arguably the most valuable unit in this specific update batch. Illuga got the standard "you were too strong in beta nerf" with reduced EM scaling, but remains a solid pick for reaction teams. The takeaway? The developers are pushing a high-investment, crystallize-focused meta. They are moving away from the easy mode bloom damage and trying to make us work for our big numbers. Anyway, let me know down in the comments, what do you think? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.